Welcome to this episode of Level with Emily Reese, featuring a conversation with composer Jason Graves for his music for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Warzone. Now, this is music for the PvP maps, the Battle Royale maps called Warzone that belong to Modern Warfare 2. It's DLC, free DLC for Modern Warfare 2 players. And it's great. He's so good at detail. I love the grooves, and he's so good at the grooves too. We talked about how he starts, how he begins with a piece like that is groove based, not necessarily melodic based, right? Some of them he starts on a synth, and some of it he doesn't. He starts with like a organic percussive groove. But it was really fun to dig in with him on those things, and also a handful of soloists, 3 people that contributed their musical prowess to this music, and really beautiful colors that they added to the score. So fun to hear about them and the music that Jason wrote. So here he is, Jason Graves, talking about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Warzone. Don't forget to check us out on Discord. That link is down in the show notes, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks so much.
I worked with Jonathan Mayer at Spider Farm Productions. He also worked on I worked on Modern Warfare 2 with him last year, and he also currently did all the music mixing and implementation and everything for Modern Warfare 3 as well. So he's a very talented, very cool, very busy dude.
Yeah.
I had to ask him like 3 times. I was like, so tell me what Warzone is again versus like Modern Warfare 2, and he explained it the same way 3 times, and I never quite understood. But as far as I know, it's kind of this free Battle Royale thing that you get, that if you buy Modern Warfare 2, there's this whole thing called Warzone. This is now updated to Warzone 2.0. But you don't call it Warzone 2.0, it's just Warzone. Yeah. I was told that. So Warzone is basically like this Battle Royale kind of map situation with new skins and characters and weapons and things that they updated. They had 6 seasons of updates over the last year. Mm-hmm. And it's just like extra DLC that's free that everyone gets to play, and is super, super, super popular, from what I understand.
Well, I mean, Battle Royale is super popular because it's really fun. Have you ever played a Battle Royale game, Jason Graves?
Yeah, I died like in 2 seconds.
Okay. I just remember the very first time I ever played Fortnite, and I was terrified. I was convinced that all 99 other players were out to get me, which is kind of the case. But it's really fun. And the thing that I really like about it, too, is that the vibe is so different. Like, not the vibe, but the intensity, the pacing of it is very different than like traditional like deathmatch or, capture the flag or any other kind of, PvP type experience. So talk to me about how you approach the music then for like this Battle Royale experience.
A lot of what I did was sort of like the next logical step from what I was writing for Modern Warfare 2 last year. And I did most of the cinematics and a lot of the stuff that ended up being used in the menus and sort of like, customizing your weapon and loading screens and things like that. Sort of getting ready was the idea of preparations, mental and physical, sort of the impetus behind the music tracks for Modern Warfare 2. And we just sort of kind of took that mental psychology and moved it over to Warzone and made it a little more world-ish, because it's a very specific, like each season had different maps that were in very specific geographical locations around the world. One would be specifically in the Middle East, so we could sort of lean into that flavor, more harmonic flavor than an instrumental sort of choice. But yeah, it was a nice continuation, and we all liked the idea. And when I say we, Steven, the audio director at Infinity Ward, and Jonathan, who was sort of implementing and mixing all the music, and then myself as the composer. We all like the idea of this forward motion, like constant forward motion and also tension, so that you feel like you need to be moving forward, in the game.
Yes, that's very true, because you kind of should keep moving and not camp out like a noob. So the other thing that I noticed too then is how long the tracks are, which makes sense because some battles like this tend to take a while. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Ever since, I guess, 2017, maybe 2016, when I worked on the very first Moss with Polyarch, I started writing these longer pieces of music, in-game music, that were more akin to like the opening suite that I would do for myself. Here's a 5 to 8 minute piece of music, just me figuring out some themes, some instruments, some mixing techniques, or experimental sounds or something like that. And with Moss, I did tracks like that were 5 to 8 minutes long. And it was just such a wonderfully freeing sort of opportunity to think outside of we need a 2-minute exploration track, and then we need a 2-minute combat track, and then we've got a cinematic that's 90 seconds long. It was just kind of write what I wanted, do all of those things in one big track. And I was doing that anyway, again, with Modern Warfare 2 last year, and it just ended up being even more inspired because of all these amazing musicians. So I started writing, a 2 or 3 minute track that had a couple of different sections, and I'd send it out to the musicians, which we can talk about them as well, but I'd send it out to them and I'd get their parts back. And the song would just end up being twice as long because there was so much amazing material that they had.
Sure.
That I'm like, oh, that gives me an idea. I could do this. And I end up extending everything and lengthening it out. And by the end of the 6th season, I was writing a 5-minute track. And they were delivering just as many parts and interesting sort of things. But it ended up being like all these layers of the musical onion that then Jonathan, as the person mixing and implementing all the music, he would have all these options of permutations of things, because most of my tracks were used from season to season, stripped down for all the main menu screens and loading screens and things, for Warzone as well. So if you Googled, Warzone, whatever, 2023 lobby music or something, season 3, it's going to be like a super stripped down version of what you hear on the final soundtrack, because Jonathan or Nicole or someone else at Spider Farm did this like really cool, selective decision-making process to extract like a 10-minute track that just feels like it's moving forward all the time.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have, 10 or 12 instruments. It's stripped down to like 2 or 3. So you just hear all these interesting kinds of textures and things.
Yeah. Very, very cool. You said something there that triggered a thought.
I said so many things.
And I lost it there. But it was about the... yeah. So, because the music that is on the soundtrack, which is on Spotify and stuff.
Totally.
It's about 36, 38 minutes of music. That is strictly for the maps, right? For the maps battling. You're out there duking it out with people from all around. That's correct?
In a way, the soundtrack is like a snapshot of kind of the big picture of music that I sent in. But it was easily extracted out to probably 60 or 90 minutes of music in the game over between all the seasons.
Yep.
Because it was like 10 or 12 minutes of music per season. We boiled it down to these musical tracks to make a soundtrack. And
gotcha.
It's just for Warzone. We didn't need to be like an hour and a half long, some mega soundtrack. It was just like, here's a sampling.
Yep.
This was all Steven from Infinity Ward. He was the one that had this idea, because they also did little LPs of... Each season had a guest artist that Jonathan would sort of either know or discover, like on YouTube, and the guest artist and I would sort of share musical duties. So for any minute of music that I'm doing in a season, there's a guest artist doing another minute of music for a lot of the in-game stuff.
Oh, cool.
So it was really, really cool, because each season was in a different location, different vibe, different composer, plus me. And I was kind of given like previews of their music, not to copy or imitate or anything like that, but just to get the vibe for. There was one, maybe it was season 3 or 4. Season 4, I think, was in Amsterdam. And gosh darn it, I can't remember the composer, but I'm sure everyone can Google him. He did an all synth thing. Yeah. And obviously I was using all these live musicians. So we did a little bit of live musician, but it was mostly me doing live stuff with some guitars from Tom Straley and very, very heavily synth-based. So I didn't change the palette completely, but we sort of leaned towards the cool synth-only idea that this other composer had done and used that to kind of pivot just for that season.
So you've brought up the musicians a few different times. Let's talk about them right off the bat because, just immediately the first track starts off with a beautiful vocalist. There's all kinds of really cool instruments like oud or maybe some other kind of Middle Eastern guitar-ish situation. And then, bowed instruments, maybe like rabab or something. I don't know, but just very cool instruments. So talk to me about all the people that you brought in to just help make this music.
Well, I brought in one person. Jonathan and Steven actually brought in the other two.
Oh, cool.
I had the idea, a lot of Modern Warfare 2 actually takes place in Mexico, and I had done, the year before, had contacted my guitar player, Tom Straley, who is in Los Angeles, and I mean, he records for Steve Jablonski. He works with Austin Wintory. He's got like 280 guitars and all these different things that he plays, and he can just pick up something immediately and make it sound like he's played it for 20 years. It's just a very natural instinct for him. And he's a super cool guy. So I'd contacted him and just said, Mexican, like sounding like authentic Mexican kinds of thing. And he played just literally on our Zoom call. He just was picking up different things. Hold on, and he'd leave the frame and he'd come back. Now, this is a so-and-so. And it's like a who's who of Mexican or whatever country you're interested in. He's got it all. And then he recorded just a super quick demo saying the same thing. Like, this is a charango. This is what it sounds like. It does this. Here's the something. This is a Baja Sexto. It's like a bass guitar, but you can play it like this. And nothing ever really happened with it because we never used guitars like that in Modern Warfare 2.
Okay.
So a year later, I'm talking with Steven and Jonathan about Warzone, and they said, well, what would you be interested in doing that might be fun or different? Like, all the Modern Warfare stuff was great. We're looking to like take the next step. We don't want to abandon what we did, but we want to do something that's interesting and new and fresh. And we were going to have a talk like in 30 minutes. And I just emailed them the MP3 that Tom had sent me, which was 8 minutes of Tom talking and playing all these guitars. And we get on our call, and the first thing that Steven says is, who is this Tom person, and can he be my new hero? Because everything he played sounded amazing. He's going to play on the Warzone thing, right? And I was like, sure. And then Jonathan suggested there was a protagonist from Modern Warfare 1 who I think is also in 2, but is coming back mostly in Warzone. And there was a vocalist who sang sort of like her theme in Modern Warfare 1 from like 3 or 4 years ago. And Jonathan said, no, I don't, you can totally do anything you want, but if you're interested, we have this vocalist who sang this part, and her name's Azam. And when I found out who she was, I first heard her on Tyler Bates' score to 300. Like
cool.
10 years ago. She's also in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Amazing singer. That's who you hear, the very first track.
Yeah.
And
beautiful
then,
voice.
I know. I said, absolutely, that sounds great. Let's speak with her. And then he also, Jonathan also said, by the way, her husband, Loga, also is a musician, and he plays all these like bowed instruments and guitars and things.
Yes.
I mean, do you want to have him? It's just like,
sure, why not? Yeah.
So it was just a big love fest. I would send sketches of just my synthesizers and drum machines, and I think the first 2 tracks on the soundtrack, I played all the strings. So I'm just doing like rough, staccato strings and like little glisses and things.
Yeah.
And a skeleton. And I gave it to all the musicians, and then they sent all this stuff back. And it just made the music so much more real, right? And like gritty. And I didn't really give anyone, other than narrowing the instrument field for Tom and for Loga, because they both have tons of guitars and strings.
Sure.
Loga did some like picked acoustic stuff. Mostly he did bowed guitar viol. Anyone talked about? So it's like a violin. It's fretted, but it's like scalloped frets, so you can play it like a guitar. Yeah. Which is why it's called a guitar viol. But he has an electric guitar viol. So a lot of the like kind of violin-y lead lines that you hear are the guitar viol.
Oh, cool.
And then Tom, I was just looking. We did some Baja Sexto. So we had some Mexican, that's like this bass guitar from Mexico. I used lots of my Deckard's Dream synthesizer, which is like an old CS80, like the synth that was used on Blade Runner back in the day. It's got a very specific kind of sound. And then there's just some generic like electric guitars, like a Fender bass and a Fender Strat, lots of oud, like you said, which was a nice catch.
I love oud.
And Serto, those were drums. And then Azam, of course, and then the guitar viol. I played all the percussion live. I did all the synths. They're all real synths, right? The drums, the electronic drums are all like, everything's outboard. I wanted it to be as legit as possible. I wanted it to be like, quote unquote, real, serious, as if we all gotten in a big studio in LA together and recorded it. That was the goal.
No, yeah, absolutely. It could be. The drumming, I mean, my goodness, there's so much great percussion in this. And, a game like this is perfect for it, right? And there's so much fun meter stuff, like always, right? So I just pictured you just having a blast. So talk to me about, the one thing it made me wonder, and I'm sure I've asked you this before, so forgive me if I have, and I've forgotten the answer, but, when there's a track that's like, really heavy percussion like that, it's like the beat is what's driving this situation. Is that where you're starting? I mean, that's got to be kind of where that comes from, rather than any melodic anything that might be going on in those pieces. Is that kind of how that goes? You're just like, oh my God, this groove would be great for a battle track or something.
Probably. It's probably, especially if there's lots of drums. Really driving if it's a combat, like high energy kind of part of the track. A lot of times the way the tracks start, the drums come in eventually, but I will start with a synth, especially the hardware, like the hardware Moog synths that I have are just super inspirational to just dial in, and I'd have a tempo and sort of start figuring out some sort of, like weird, filtery, cool kind of thing. And I'd know that I was going to be in, for whatever reason, I'm at 110 BPM, I'm going to be in 9/8, and I'm going to be in G minor. Always minor, of course, but I'm going to be in G. Yeah. So I would just spend like an hour on a synth, just doing different things and recording the whole time as I go. And then go back and start cutting it all up and kind of moving it around and maybe filtering it some more, or putting like an envelope thing that gives it like a kind of a thing on it. Run it through a bunch of guitar pedals. And that would be the other way that I would sort of construct one of these grooves. And most of the time it'd just be with like one synthesizer. It's just 5 or 6 tracks doing completely different things of that one synth.
Yep.
But just that tangible, like moving the knobs and recording it, and it's not perfectly in time, but it's like it's got a groove to it. That would inspire me as well when I wanted it to get bigger eventually.
Yep.
To put the drums kind of on top of that. That was really one of the first times that it wasn't just 100% rhythm, because usually I grab a drum and just hit and start playing stuff, and that drum makes me think of doing something else, which triggers an idea to do another thing. Right. So it was nice to do it with synths, because I don't have the patience to sit in front of a computer and like click through presets and be like, no. I want to turn the knobs and play the keys and like really feel like I'm playing an instrument, not just clicking a mouse.
Yeah. All the electric guitar was great too. I mean, this is very, this is the world of Call of Duty, or just any really kind of like amped up American PvP situation, right? Like, it's just great. So, I mean, and it's just like whenever the guitar just comes in, it's like, wow, you're like, yeah. So, talk to me about that. You said did you play a lot of that stuff too, or no? That was Tom and Luca, did you say? I'm sorry, what was his name?
Oh, no, Loga.
Loga, yeah.
Yeah, Loga did some acoustic guitar and some electric guitar viola. They were more lead lines. That was mostly, I'm imagining that was mostly Tom, like, playing his Strat. Like, I do a little bit of, like ding, 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 ding,
some,
you know, kind of like some
stuff,
noodling.
yeah.
But when it comes to, like, sounding cool on an electric guitar, I just don't know enough, like, of the positions to just not make it sound like cowboy chords, and you know, playing like everything I do seems to sound like "Hit Me with Your Best Shot," like down, 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 and it's like, that's not Call of Duty.
That's me. I mean, "Hit Me with Your Best Shot" could be. You never know, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, if they did
only.
like a modern like recording and Tom played electric guitar, then it would definitely sound cool. But he would do things like ding 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 ding, like this cool line on a baritone guitar that I never would have thought of doing. And he sends me everything dry, but he also sends stuff with effects. So it would have like this spring reverb on it, like this kind of boingy. Something I would never do because I would think that it would sound too cheesy. Not that I thought his sounded cheesy. I wouldn't do it because I'm like, no, that's too... Well, he does it. It sounds awesome. So I ended up using probably more than half of his guitar stuff was just straight in the way he recorded it off the amp, with all the effects and the cool reverbs and things. And what's nice is now, the more we work on stuff like this, the more I think he feels like complete freedom to try different things, which is how I feel as a composer. Like, the more I try different things and people tend to like them, then that makes me try even more different things, which just means you're having more fun.
Yeah. No, I loved it. That's great. And then, you know, with regards to percussioning, you know, I got a chance to see you in April here at VGMCon in the Twin Cities, which was super fun, of course, as always.
Of course.
Hanging out with some Jason Graves. But at the time, you mentioned that you had been practicing, I don't know if practicing a lot is the right term, but you'd been playing drums a lot. You'd been working on your kit and stuff. Is that still happening? Are you still doing that? Yeah.
Well, there's sadly, you can see a big empty space back next to the cello. Yeah, but that's only because the front wall is getting rebuilt in the next month or so, and they have to take the whole desk. It's a big desk, and they have to push the whole desk to the back of the room so that they can access the front wall. So about 2 months ago, I had to strike the drum set. But it's it's kind of like weightlifting, like bodybuilding. Not that I would know, but like, you know, like if you do a lot of exercise and weightlifting and everything, and you get real big and like you're super swole and all that, like when you stop exercising, you don't like go back to puny man immediately, right? Like it would take a couple of years to sort of. That's kind of how I feel, because I was so in the pocket on doing drums. I played them for like a year and a half, just drum set. I play 3 or 4 times a week for like 30, 40, 60 minutes sometimes each time.
Yeah.
So I could just pick up the percussion stuff, and everything was just like immediately kind of there. So I did a lot of fun, just one take. Don't edit it. Let it feel a little live, with all the percussion and some of the big drums too. So even though the drum set was taken down, it still lives on.
It lives on. Why are they rebuilding the wall?
Well, because right now the speakers that I have are on stands, and they're smaller. They're temporary from 2 years ago.
Okay.
The ultimate plan is to have them soffit mounted, which means they're mounted in the walls. Yeah. And I essentially kicked everybody out 2 years ago because it was like, guys, I got to start writing music. You need to leave. Yeah. Because it took 3 months to get everything moved in, to get all the cabling done, to get everything wired and the sound taken care of. And it was a long process, but it was time. Yeah. So they'll be putting the new speakers in. I won't hit my head when I walk behind the desk anymore. It'll be nice.
Good. I'm glad. So you didn't have any there are no cinematics for this particular soundtrack, but you of course did many cinematics for Modern Warfare 2. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first thing I jumped onto for Modern Warfare 2 was like pretty much all the cinematics.
Okay.
Because those can be the trickiest sometimes, and they come online like at the last minute, to get all the CGI finished and everything. But yeah, this was basically not sight unseen because I had some gameplay and I could play the game as much as I wanted, but it was more just brainstorming with Jonathan and Steven with each season about trying some different things, and no specific, like, especially after the first season, they loved everything I did so much that it was just sort of like, okay. Then I was nervous they weren't going to like the next thing as much. And every time they're like, this is even better, which was just so incredibly kind of them. And we did, Halloween was the last thing that I did. And Tyler Bates did the guest slot for Halloween.
Cool. Okay.
And he did a slightly more orchestra, like darker kind of vibe, and mine was more like experimental piano that I have on the stairs, and like spooky kinds of strings but no orchestra sounds. So we sort of had completely different avenues of approach, but I think they ended up working really, really well together. They kind of yin and yang complemented each other, and I was worried that those last two tracks were going to be like, not as strong or something. And I think Jonathan texted me something like, way to end the season, like best tracks yet, mic drop or something like that. I'm like, oh, well, great. I'm so glad that you like them.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit too about the different biomes or different environments or something that you said the maps take place in different parts of the world, I assume. So talk, because, we mentioned some of the Arabic things, but if it's, happening in Texas or something, maybe there isn't oud. I'm not sure.
Yeah, totally. Like, I know the first, like, three, I'm looking at the kind of the track lists that I have for the different seasons. Yeah. The first three seasons were very much like Al-Mazrah or Al-Mazrah.
Yeah.
So that was very much a Mideastern location. But I didn't do any flat nines or harmonic minors or anything like that. I just kind of stuck with the good old-fashioned like minor, because I knew that Azam, who is an Iranian musician, would basically just kind of do like whatever she was going to do. Yeah. I didn't give all three of them, no specific directions. The idea was just do what inspires you, do what you feel like would be fun to do when you hear these tracks. Yeah. And they had all the time changes and like the different breakdowns and everything sort of there. It's just sometimes it would just be kind of empty with like a little percussion thing playing. Season 5, I believe, was the one that was in Amsterdam.
Okay. Yeah.
It looks like season 5 was Amsterdam. So that was more like electronic and synth kind of focused. And then season 6 was Halloween, which was just like all bets were off.
Yeah.
They had so many great characters. They had like Spawn and just great characters from films, and then just really fun, interesting, like unique, original characters. So that was just like not motivational from geography whatsoever. It was just do fun, creepy stuff.
Yep. Cool. Love it. Yeah. I mean, what else do you want to tell me about it? I know that, when you started working on Call of Duty, that was like a dream for you. Like, I can't believe I'm working on Call of Duty. So it sounds like the experience has just been great, really. Like, because that could have gone down in flames, especially a massive franchise like Call of Duty could be. Notoriously, there are plenty of examples where things like that can just go bad. So it's really cool that team is so, engaged, and I think we've talked about this before too, just how much they want the music part of the game to be solid, which I really appreciate, because they could very much decide not to do that, and I'm grateful they do.
I think the very first game I played, it was Medal of Honor, but I mean, Medal of Honor, Call of Duty. It's that same general idea of just like super huge military franchise, right? But the very first game that I really noticed music for when I was old enough to not be playing, 80s and 90s, like Nintendo and 8-bit stuff, was the first Medal of Honor, because the score was orchestral. Yeah. And it was just sort of like, whoa, what? Like this sounds like something from Saving Private Ryan in a good way, not in a redundant, like derivative sort of way. Like it literally sounds like it could be in a film. I want to do something like that. So it's always been one of my bucket list things that I never really expected to be able to do. Yeah. Mostly because I did World War II games earlier in my career, but nothing like modern, nothing, serious, multiplayer, military kind of like cool sort of thing. So I didn't really have anything on my track list. Even though I did have a Call of Duty game, I don't know, 8 years ago or something, I was working on with Don Vecca from Dead Space. Yeah. Because his team was working on it, and Don ended up going to another developer, like a VR developer, I think, because he was ready for some non-violent games to work on. Who can blame him? And the whole thing kind of got plucked from wherever it was being produced and put somewhere else. And they ended up hiring another composer. And I was like, well, that was my one shot. And if that didn't happen, then that's totally fine. I mean, at least I had I was like, adjacent to working on a Call of Duty game. So yeah, this was really, really great. And I have to hand it to Steven, because he pushed the idea of having a soundtrack that was like, he's like, I wanted it to be like Warzone, like the soundtrack to Warzone with Jason's name on the front, because he's contributing so much to this. And that just the nicest people in the world. And everyone's just so like kind and happy and excited to try new things and like do the best job that we can do with everybody, with everybody involved, which is not uncommon in games, but this was just special. Like, it was just really, really like made you happy doing all this really serious, like tense music, right? But the musicians and the personnel, like Jonathan's people at Spider Farm, and the mixes that they would do, and the soundtrack, we got it mastered. The mastering sounds great, the mixing sounds great. Just everything was just, like world class, like top notch, like the best you can get.
Love that.
I think. Yeah.
Jason, what else are you working on right now that you can tell us about?
Let's see. I see a whole bunch of no's in my current project folder right now.
That's exciting, though. I love that. I love to hear it. Yeah.
What is really great is, of course, I'm doing some horror stuff that's going to be coming out next year sometime, I think. But I'm also doing lots of non-horror stuff. Some even to the point like it's like a family sort of vibe.
Oh, wow.
Is like not even action, like fun, family fun kind of thing, which I'm really, really enjoying doing. And I think that's a big testament to game developers in general, that it's more, I work with a lot of people because I've worked with them before. They're like, oh, hey, we're doing this thing. It's actually not a scary game, but would you be up for trying something different? It's like, of course I would. Like,
yes.
Totally.
Yes.
Always.
Always. Cool. That's great. What more do you want to say about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Warzone?
I'm just incredibly proud of the soundtrack that's out, but also the music that's in the game, which is much more music in the game and a different representation. But I always love like trying new things and learning new things, and I learned a lot with these 6 seasons of of Warzone just from mixing and production, like doing that kind of fun stuff, and hopefully, like projects have in the past, this sort of game and this kind of soundtrack will lead to more work doing the same stuff with more like-minded people.
Yeah, love it. Oh, Jason Graves, it's always so great to talk to you. Yeah, thanks for coming on today.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure, as always. And there's going to be, I see 5 more chances for us to talk again.
Awesome. Good.
In the near future.
I love that. That makes me happy. Thank you so much, Jason.
Me too.